We are shifting gears a little bit and going into a new direction, into a new series, as you could tell with the little video just a moment ago, a series called Gratitude. And gratitude is more than an attitude. Gratitude is more than a feeling. Gratitude is more than a perspective. It's more than an emotion. Gratitude, in fact, I believe, is a key that unlocks a door that would normally not open. In other words, I think for some of you, there is a realization that there is something more. You're just not sure what that more is yet. And there is something beyond what you're experiencing now. And I think that there are going to be large numbers of you that come to realize that that key to more is the key of gratitude. It's having a sense of gratitude, not a feeling of thankfulness, but an actual sense of gratitude, which I believe is an action. Let's talk about that key today. If you've got a Bible, open it up to the book of Luke, the third book in the New Testament. We'll be in Luke chapter 17 as we get this real life story of a time when Jesus encountered some people who were ready for more and really anything but what they were experiencing. And they did experience more, but then there was one who actually experienced even more than that. And those are the kind of people that I want us to check out today. Luke chapter 17, verse 11, it says, "Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, 'Jesus, Master, have pity on us.' When he saw them, he said, 'Go and show yourselves to the priest.' And as they went, they were cleansed." Now we'll stop right there and pick up and make sure that we're all on the same page, because that's a different kind of scenario than anything we're going to experience nowadays. But there were 10 men who had this disease called leprosy, which most of the time is associated with some sort of skin disease, but there was no cure. People were afraid of it, and if you had it, you were isolated away from everyone else. You could only be in the presence of people who also had leprosy. So you could only be with people who had your same struggle, experienced the same problems, had those same feelings, felt just as ugly as you did, just as miserable as you were, and were just as isolated as you were. So they were, in essence, quarantined away from everyone else. They couldn't go to church. They couldn't go to the market. They couldn't be around a house with other people that they loved, their friends and family. They had to be completely put away. And when they're coming down the street, others had to step away. No one wanted to be around them at all. So that was their existence. There was no known cure. They were only waiting on a miracle from God because no one knew how to deal with it. They heard that Jesus, the supposed miracle worker, was coming into town. So these 10 men who were just hanging around each other because they were all afflicted with the same thing, they stood across the street away from Jesus, unable to go near him, and just shouted and said, "Master, have pity on us." And Jesus looked back and shouted to them and said, "Go show yourselves to the priest." What he meant by that was, you go to the only person that can authoritatively say you are now clean. You're not considered unclean anymore. You can now be with your people again. You've been restored. You've experienced a miracle, and only the priest could do that. And when they turned, believing him enough to go see if this could happen, they were cleansed on the way. They were healed along the way. They get to the priest. The priest apparently looks them over, examines them, and decides all 10 of them have actually experienced a miracle. But then we read on, because for these guys, this could have been the end of the story. And for 9 of them, it actually was. It's a good story. I mean, I had this disease. I didn't know what I was going to do. I shouted at Jesus. Jesus shouted back, and he healed me. It's pretty powerful. It's pretty miraculous. And that could be the end of it. We never hear from them again. But for one, there was more. There was more to this story for him. And in verse 15, it says, "One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan." Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." Now, this one that came back actually was called a Samaritan, which meant he was of a mixed race, and there was just a lot of, in that time, that culture, a lot of problems that the Jewish people had with Samaritans. So not only was he originally unclean and had this disease, he was also an outcast, and he was also someone that Jesus was not supposed to associate with. There were so many layers of problems here. Yet Jesus shouted across the street, he was healed, and he was the one of the 10 that said, "I'm going to go back and thank him face to face. I owe him that. He deserves more than this." So he went back and throws himself at the feet of Jesus and thanks him. And then Jesus said something that to me is a little odd. He said, "Rise, your faith has made you well." He didn't say, "Rise, y'all's faith has made y'all well." I mean, there was none of that. It was, "Your faith has made you well," distinguishing him from the other 9. So it seems that they're all well, they're all cleansed according to the priest, but there's something different here in that he looks at this one man and said, "Now stand up, go, your faith has made you well." So there's something completely different about this man than the other 9. What was different? What's happening here? What was the more? The lack of gratitude from the other 9 ended their story right there. There was no more. For them, the rest of their life was going to be, there was a time when I had leprosy, but now I'm healed. For this one, the presence of gratitude to Jesus symbolized he also was placing himself at his feet in a way of expressing his faith. And it meant enough where Jesus says, "Now you are healed." What do you mean now that you're healed? Well, let's open that up today because gratitude is a key. And I believe first, gratitude is the key that unlocks more meaning. For this young man, this key of gratitude unlocked more meaning for him. Like he was able to have more of an understanding, an appreciation for what went on. He was able to clarify what was going on in his life. He would not have understood had he not gone back. So the man that was healed went back to the healer, and it was only then that he understood the meaning of the healing. Because for the other 9, the whole goal was just to have my skin cleared up, to be able to go back and be with my people again. But Jesus said, no, there was something more than that. And he would have never gotten this had he not gone back to the healer. Maybe it would help us all if we thought of every gift that God had given us in our lives as needing instructions. That we receive a gift and we can take the gift home, we can take possession of the gift, we can claim the gift, we can use the gift, but ultimately, unless we get instructions from the maker of the gift, we don't know what it's for. We don't know exactly how to use it. There's meaning that we can only find when we go back to the healer. The gift doesn't have full understanding until we're able to go back to the one who gave it. Think for a moment about the gifts and talents that you have been given, the abilities. Some of you have talents and abilities that you know and recognize the people around you look at and say, "You are good at that." But unless you go back to the giver and say, "God, you've made me good at this and I don't know why. Help me to understand this," your assumption is going to be that God just gave me this talent so I could go make a living and then I could die. And then my story's over. Or I can go back and say, "God, why have you chosen to give me this gift, give me this ability, show me the reason for it so that I can leave a legacy and I can make you proud that you gave me this, that you entrusted me with this gift." Because you all know God could just as easily given the person sitting next to you the gift that you have, and it wouldn't be yours. But he chose to give it to you. He gave you a skill that not everyone has. It could have easily been your next door neighbor, but he gave it to you. And you could just say, "Well, I have it. I'm not going to ask questions. I don't want him to take it away. I'm just going to use it, make a living, and make as much money as I can and then die." Or, "God, there's a purpose and a reason behind this gifting that you gave me. What is it? So that I can be found faithful with it and so that you can be glad that you gave it to me, that you entrusted me with this." Some of you have been given influence. Some of you have intelligence that's just uncommon. Not me, but some of you have intelligence that is uncommon. Some of you have beauty, and you have an appearance, and you have a shine, and people want to be around you, and you're striking, and you catch people's eyes. Some of you have the ability to lead and to organize and to rally people to do great things. Why do you have those gifts? You will never know unless you spend time with the giver. And the one who was healed could have easily just gone on and lived his life and enjoyed his freedom. And that could have been his story. But instead, he chose to run back to the one who gave it, fall at his feet, and say, thank you. So gratitude is a key that unlocks more meaning, but it also is the key that unlocks more healing. 9 of them assumed that that was going to be it, that that was their story, that that was their goal. And yet the one goes back, and he gets a healing that the rest of them don't experience. Because ultimately, Jesus, one of the reasons, the meanings with the healing was that they would experience something more than just having their skin cleared up, more than just being able to go back into the community. He said, this physical healing I'm doing in you right now is actually going to lead to a spiritual healing. That is my goal, and you, sir, have figured it out, and you are going to experience this. The rest, you're going to miss it. So there was something bigger, and he was saying to him, now there is more for you. Now, I don't know all of you. I don't know all of your stories. I'm thankful to know a few. But I do know that there are some of you that are frustrated, wondering what there is that you're not doing, because there's got to be more. And I really believe there may be something in your life, a key that you're missing, and it might be this key of gratitude. For some of you, more is just on the other side of being grateful. We've got this psalm that talks about a grateful heart, because we all claim to have grateful hearts. But if we just have a grateful heart and don't express it, it's just a feeling of thankfulness. It doesn't do anything. But in Psalm 50, the writer said, make thankfulness your sacrifice to God, and keep the vows you made to the Most High. Then call on me when you are in trouble, and I will rescue you, and you will give me glory. His phrase was, make thankfulness your sacrifice. Oftentimes we come to God in worship thinking, what can I give God? I mean, how do I have anything to offer him? And right here he says, I'll tell you, one gift that I'm asking for is thankfulness. You say, well, I'm thankful. No, more than a feeling. Gratitude. The willingness that this young man had to go find Jesus, throw himself at his feet and say, I owe everything to you now. I want to live the kind of life that makes you glad you gave me this gift, that makes you want to trust me with more. I want you to know how grateful I am for this opportunity. So what does that mean for us? That means me waking up every morning saying, God, I want to thank you for a heart that beats and lungs that allow me to breathe. I've got one more day at least on this earth, apparently, and I don't want to waste it. I don't want to spend it in a way that makes you regret giving me one more day. I want it to be worthy of catching your attention and moving you to the point where maybe I get one more. It means me saying, God, you have given me eyes to be able to see all that you've made. You've given me eyes to be able to see all the things that you've created. So forgive me for ever wasting time with these eyes, looking at things that don't give you honor, because now I realize I'm wasting the gift that you've given me. God, you've given me a mouth to be able to tell you how great you are, tell the rest of creation how great you are. And forgive me for wasting it with my bitterness, with my criticism, with my constant nagging and frustration and gossip and all the stuff that comes out. Surely I was given a mouth for more than that. Surely. It's me taking every gift that God's given me and doing what I can to walk back to him and say, I recognize this is a gift. I thank you for this gift. And I'm now asking that you somehow give me one more opportunity to tell you how grateful that I am by the way I express it. Well, gratitude's not an easy thing to express. And sometimes we need a little help being gracious and doing something about it. And this Thanksgiving and Christmas season are perfect times to be able to do that. And we're actually going to give you tangible ways to show gratitude today. nervous. Nothing's happening now. But after the service is over with, we want to invite you to express it in a couple of ways. One, we have a large number of families in our community, names that we've been given, families that cannot provide a Thanksgiving meal for themselves. And each year at the Bridge, we give you an opportunity to take one family and provide a Thanksgiving meal for them. And so if you're willing to do that this Thanksgiving, we're here, it's just a couple of weeks away now. If you're willing to do that, stop by the connection point on the way out, sign up and say, okay, where's my family? How do I connect? So introvert alert. You don't just get to buy groceries and mail them to them and say, I did it. There's an actual relational component, so be warned with that. If being around a real live human being scares you to death, another option is to provide a Christmas coat for a preschooler who doesn't have one, who needs a new coat for this winter. And we'll give you that opportunity as well. You actually won't have to interact, so you're welcome, introverts. You can go to the connection point on the way out. You'll sign up. You'll ultimately be given the name, gender, and size, and you'll be able to go provide a coat. We do this every year at the Bridge. It's a chance for you to just be gracious. And if you have a family, I encourage you to let your family be a part of that, to help them begin to experience that contagious gratitude that we hope filters out. And then there's one more way, one more tangible way that at least I want to present to you today. You're not going to like me for this because it's going to make you feel very pressured, some of you. Some of you don't know me and don't care what I say, so that's all right. You'll be good to go today. The rest of you, this might be a little weird because now you feel like you got to. I want to encourage all of you this Thanksgiving season, meaning over the next 3 weeks, choose one night and have one family over for a Thanksgiving meal, but it must be a family that's never been in your home before. So, one family, never been there before. It doesn't need to be a stranger, just a family, someone you know. Invite them over, and here are the stipulations. Let them know how thankful you are for the relationship that you have as friends. Secondly, ask them how you can pray for them this holiday season. And then third, pray right then and there on the spot. I know that's going to be the killer for some of you, but just instead of blessing the broccoli, just ask God to bless them. Just skip the food part and just say, Lord, I'm thankful for these friends, and we ask that you would do whatever. In Jesus' name, amen. Just a simple way to connect and be grateful. Show gratitude, and hopefully that will become a contagious thing. Gratitude is not an easy thing. It is not a natural thing. We will fight selfishness until the day Jesus calls us home. But every little opportunity we have to express that we are grateful for the moments, for the opportunities, the resources, the abilities God's given us, and are able to show that, that brings us closer and closer to these kind of people. The kind of people that experience more meaning, the kind of people who experience more healing. And then thirdly and lastly, gratitude is a key that unlocks more favor. Now, favor is usually a churchy word, unless we're talking about do me a favor. When we talk about the favor of God, God's favor on our lives. But there's something about a life of gratitude that invites and moves the hand of God and invites favor onto our lives. And it makes sense to me. I've got 2 kids. My wife and I have 2 kids. They're grown now. And they're very different, but we love them to death. I love your kids. I love my kids' friends, but my kids get my favor. I mean, I pour it out on them in a way that I don't pour it out on other people's kids. It just makes sense. But I got to thinking about this idea of gratitude this week, and I remember when my kids were much smaller, maybe 3 and 5-ish, maybe 4 and 7, I don't know, somewhere in there. 4 and 6, I got math hard. Anyway, but they're 2 years and 3 months apart. But our kids were little, and on Christmas morning, as we gathered around the tree, they would begin with opening whatever Santa brought. So they start with Santa's gifts, and then they get to the good gifts, what Mom and Dad actually got them this Christmas. So they would open up Santa's, and there's no one to thank there because, as far as we know, Santa doesn't hear our thanks, and he's not all-knowing and all that. But we're in the room, so we let the kids open up gifts. My daughter opened up hers this particular Christmas that I'm remembering first. And she looked at me, 5, 6 years old, those huge blue eyes, and just said, "Thank you, Daddy. Thank you, Mom. Thank you so much." And I mean, it means the world, and your hearts melt when you see them genuinely excited and actually thankful. And we said, "Yeah, look, you're welcome. Glad to have giving it to you. Merry Christmas." We get to my son, a couple years younger, and this was the first Christmas that I remember that there was a little more understanding of, oh, that costs money. That's from Dad. Dad gave money for it. Like there was just a little bit of, okay, it's more than just Dad's just pulling gifts off trees. Like he began to understand the situation. And so my son looked up at us and said, "Thank you so much," losing his mind in excitement. And he got up from the tree, stepped through the gifts and the unopened gifts still, and gave me a hug and gave Christy a hug. And then he went back to his little spot where he was going to open up the rest of his gifts. Next level, man. Like that was a really cool thing. So my daughter opened up her next one, big blue eyes. "Thank you, Daddy. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mom." Cool thing. Get to my son, second gift opened up. It wasn't even, I don't even remember what the gift was. I know it wasn't significant. He jumps up, runs to us, wraps his arms around us. "Thank you." "Thanks, Mom." And he goes and is seated. Well, my daughter is not that expressive of a person. She's a little bit me. So she's a little dry, doesn't really express herself a whole lot. But she is not stupid. And so she's watching thinking, if this has any bearing on next, so she opens up that third or fourth gift, whatever that was, and she gets up and runs over, "Thank you, Dad," all that. And so we're having this big hug fest happening. And so it gets back and forth, and we got more hugs that day than we'd ever had in the history of our family. It was an incredibly expressive moment. But do you think for a moment that didn't move me and make me want to do more and more and more and more and more? Of course it did. Move me in a way that nothing else could. Did I love them more because they came over to me and said thanks? No. But did it move me in a way that it would otherwise not have? Absolutely. And any sort of illustration and image that we try to project, or I try to project onto God, falls at different points. I understand that. I'm not saying God feels the way I feel about things. God's ways are much higher than mine. But what I do know is as I go through the story of God, gratitude moves his hand. And gratitude moves God to do more. And for whatever reason, we've got this story of 10 people who we thought were all healed, and yet the one that came back, Jesus said, "Rise and go, young man. You get it. Your faith has made you well. You're more than just able to be in a crowd. Your faith has done something different in you." And I believe with all my heart, just because of years of watching it, that there are some of you who experience your healing from a distance. And you were on the other side of the proverbial street. You were in the back of a church. You were in the back of a building. You were somewhere looking online. You were watching a YouTube sermon. You pulled out a Bible by yourself. Whatever the case was, and from across the street, you basically called out and said, "God, please heal me. I need you." And God said, "Yes, I will respond." And he healed you, and a great thing happened. But for many of you, that seemed like the end of the journey. I was lost, now I'm found. That's it. Whereas we look at this story in Scripture and we find Jesus saying, "You were sick, now you're healed. And then when you came close to me, your story began." And since that day that some of you said yes to him, is it possible that Jesus is still there in the street waiting on you to come back and throw yourself at his feet and say, "God, I could not do this without you, and I need you. Now, how can I live a life that thanks you for all that you've done for me, all the gifts? And if you never give me another gift, I'm okay, because you've done enough." A heart of gratitude. And if you're not a follower of Jesus, I'm not saying that finding him is hard. I'm just saying that it's not from a distance. "God, I know you don't want to be around me, but would you please save me?" You've got a Savior saying here, "I'm not afraid of all your scars. I'm not afraid of your disease. I'm not afraid of your yuck. I'm not afraid of your past. Take my hand and let me pull you close." Because here you will find the meaning behind all the things I'm doing for you. You'll find more and more and more because I've got so much I want to give you. But I can't pour it out on you if you're not here. So I need you here.